Good morning, good afternoon and good evening wherever you're joining us for this PEX Network OPEX in Financial Services webinar. My name is Georgina Vilcek and I'm delighted to introduce ProcessMaker and Access Bank, who will be giving this presentation very shortly. Before we get started, here are some quick administrative points for you. During the webinar, if you have any questions for either of the presenters about anything that they raised during their webinar, you can submit them in the Q&A box on your screen, and these will be answered as we go or during the Q&A session after the presentation. Likewise, for any technical issues, you can write them in the Q&A box and we'll get onto those for you right away. The widgets on your screen can all be resized and dragged around, so make sure that you have everything aligned for your particular size of device. And now you're sitting comfortably, it's my great pleasure to hand over to today's presenters. We have with us Peter Brown, VP of Solutions for ProcessMaker, and Ade Bajomo, Executive Director of Access Bank. Welcome both of you, and Peter, over to you.
And thank you so much, Georgina. This is Peter Brown. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I wanted to quickly give a formal introduction for Ade. Ade is the Executive Director overseeing all of technology, innovation, and IT at Access Bank. He has over 3 decades of work experience with a track record of delivery and leadership in global financial services, spanning banking, capital markets, asset management, and insurance. And over this period, he's led major transformation and service enhancement programs, driven business growth initiatives, mergers, acquisitions, and integrations of acquired entities within these sectors. So Ade, before we get into the major content for the webinar, I'm going to just give a quick background about ProcessMaker. ProcessMaker has been in business for about 20 years. We have been live with our solution with a variety of banks and financial services organizations throughout the world for a number of years now, with many different awards that we've received throughout the years. ProcessMaker's platform is a low-code solution where you can drag and drop and automate workflows, web forms, and a variety of other tooling. In particular, with Access Bank as our customer, Ade and his team have achieved amazing results with our technology, and we'll come back to this in much more detail later. But just to give a great idea of what's his team has been able to accomplish, they've been able to save nearly $10 million a year using our technology. And last year, they won the Innovation of the Year award from the CEO at Access for some of their work. So with that said, the topics we're going to talk about today, really looking forward to Ade's breadth of experience and expertise in a few areas, but we're going to talk about his role of being in charge of technology at Access Bank, what the situation looked like prior to implementing ProcessMaker, and then also how he and his team are preparing for the future, both through growth of mergers and acquisitions that they've done as well as into the future, and then also very timely with what's happening with COVID and how that's going to impact the bank and their strategy going forward. So those are going to be the topics for today. We very much look forward to going this together. So Ade, as we get started here, I want you to tell us a bit about the situation at your bank with your technology before ProcessMaker. Before I do that, though, one of the quick things that we've seen with many of our different clients is that their systems often look very disconnected, where they have siloed data in 10, 20, 30 different systems, none of them talking to their core banking system. And often this leads to siloed processes where there's all kinds of bottlenecks, ultimately giving a frustrating experience for their customers or vendors, attorneys, other partners, etc. Obviously, at Access Bank, your story was a bit different there, Ade. You had some existing vendors in place. I'd really love to hear about what your current state was prior to ProcessMaker, and then why you decided to select ProcessMaker.
Thanks, Peter. Prior to ProcessMaker, we had a process automation tool which was built by a very experienced company. But we could only automate just a handful of processes on it, primarily the credit processes, as it were, circa 15 processes, which only looked after a very specific and bespoke part of the business. So you could say outside of that, the rest was as the frustrating diagram that you drew up or you showed earlier on as well. So the bank was very clear about its ambition that to sustain our growth plans, to drive efficiency, we had to go for something far more beyond what we had. We had to fundamentally go for a less paper office, at worst, so a paperless office at best, and drive huge efficiencies because our background has been one around organic growth and acquisitive growth. So to support all of that, we realized we had to change, and we had to go for something that allows us to be more agile and actually drive through the entire organization.
Yeah, that's really interesting feedback. And so I'd love to hear a little bit more about the agility. What is it about a technology in particular that you feel is critical to provide you agility?
So, when we went out to look for a new solution, there were some fundamental building blocks we had in mind. One is that we wanted a solution that our people will own. And let me explain what I mean by that. The subject matter experts often reside in businesses. And if you're going to digitize your business, then you have to basically get the people inside the business digitized or digitalized as it were, really. So what we did was we selected a team of 30 people, those with very strong coding proficiency. Yeah, and we looked for a tool which required a minimal level of coding, but anybody who's reasonably logical can follow through, be trained at a pretty short time to gain a level of competency, and then work with subject matter experts to actually code those manual processes into automated processes. All this sounded theoretical a bit when we started it. But I can tell you within 3 months, we were able to train the 30 people, set up 8 squads with business subject matter experts, the ProcessMaker experts. We augmented them with consultants, local consultants on ProcessMaker, and we gave them use cases. And, within a period of 6 months, we had delivered well over 60 use cases on ProcessMaker by a team largely, 90% in-house. And as you can imagine, the more of these they did, the stronger and more confident they became. And in the first year, the team delivered 156 processes, all done in-house.
Wow. That's quite an incredible story to deliver that kind of results from a technology team. As we advance, I'd love to dig a bit deeper about the implementation experience there. So often the experience that when I work with other institutions, they come off other technologies, and their story often sounds a lot like this, where they bought the program and had some maybe inflated expectations, and then there was the dip. And I like to call this the valley of despair. And ultimately, they invested time and money and people, and so they really try to make it work and get mediocre adoption. Or worse, they end up rejecting the software. And so often this, in my experience, has to do with not only enabling the right staff, as you mentioned, but also change management with the end users themselves. So can you talk a little bit about both the team that rolled out these processes, but also how you enabled the end users themselves to get buy-in?
Yes, you're absolutely right, Peter. Change management is key. And right at the top of change management has to be executive buy-in. So there was buy-in right at the board level that we had to actually change the way we operate. We have 28,000 staff, 600 branches, and still growing very, very fast, even as of today, really. So the appetite for change came from the top in this instance, really. And the support for change was that, the teams were very excited in the sense that they were learning new skills, and they were learning how to deliver if you like, solutions that allow them to do their work much better and actually be able to do more, with less staff or same staff as well. And actually, as we scale up, it meant they had more capacity to do other things as well. So, the executive buy-in was extremely essential. Using agile teams meant that, we could pick problems very quickly, we could resolve those problems very, very quickly, we could set timelines, and when there are bottlenecks and issues, the project teams could work themselves, the squads rather, could work themselves through those issues, escalate, seek attention as required. So, that two combination actually really bolstered the change process. I guess, in the early diagram, you drew up with the value of this file. The best of that we experienced was probably at the start, when we were training a large team that were largely non-developers, but with good aptitude for coding, so to speak, really. So the first two processes they did were pretty tough. Pretty tough for them. It was a huge, strong learning curve. But after they broke the learning curve, it was, the pace at which they were able to go was very impressive, very, very impressive.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think that one of the things I heard you say really is that maybe the first one or two, you had to work through some of the kinks, and the staff obviously had to learn the tools and also how to best deliver the results. But ultimately, after working through some of those with both the combination of ProcessMaker and some local partners and your team, you were then very rapidly able to iterate. And I'd love to talk a little bit more about the results in more detail as well. It's a pretty incredible story. I believe now, 2.5 years later, you now have about 300 or over 300 processes. But the other day you were telling me that it's also not just about the number of processes you've automated, but the number of users in the system, both your staff as well as customers, kind of from a transaction perspective. I'd love to hear a bit more about the volume aspect. How have you been able to manage running that kind of volume through the system?
Like I said earlier on, Peter, if you like, the anchor for this success, if I could use that word, has to be because it was led from the top, and there was a clear buy-in at the top that we were going to achieve process efficiency. We were going to get rid of manual processes, and we're going to be able to deliver a far more enduring service wherever we can. I mean, you could just imagine a traditional bank, with all the paper, all the approvals that you needed to do historically. The papers could circulate for days, if not weeks, and you wouldn't even know where it was at any point in time. We were able to set SLAs for every approval that went in through. So if customers made a request in a branch, it went through ProcessMaker, and those requests got a sign off the required with the right SLAs and the right escalations that are required as well. As of this year, we're running circa 2 million records every month, or approvals every month on ProcessMaker, across the organization. And we've been able to work with your team back in the US to scale up the system. We probably stretched the system to its limits to be quite fair. But I think you guys have been quite helpful in helping fix those issues and actually, help us scale it up beyond even, what we think it's capable of. So, so far, it's been a pretty good experience.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. And I think one of the things I heard you say there that really I'd love to highlight is that part of the reason you were able to run that much volume through the system is because the customer turnaround time and the experience of some of these, your SLAs were now trackable. And so you were able to have the same staff produce more, accounts and more loans from a production perspective simply because of the efficiency as well. Is that a fair assessment?
It is an absolutely fair assessment. I mean, we went beyond just simple, if you like, translation of paper into digital format for approvals. We actually went into integrating ProcessMaker into some of our core platforms as well. So we eliminated completely, all sorts of manual handoffs or even further on. So it's integrated into quite a number of systems just to enable complete straight-through processing wherever it made sense for us to actually achieve that. So it's beyond just simple ProcessMaker there. I think it's integrated to no less than 5 platforms within the bank, serving various functions.
Makes sense. Well, thank you. So that's a little bit about some of the technology situation. I think some of the conversations you and I have had previously, the technology is so critical because scale cannot be achieved as a bank without the right technology. But also, one of the unique things, certainly about Access Bank, is some of the growth that you have experienced. Of course, both organically, but in particular, you went through a pretty large acquisition recently. And one of the things, as I've talked to many other banks who've done M&A activity, if there's manual processes where this picture is the case, it's often very hard to integrate not just the systems, but the banks themselves, the cultures of the banks. And I know that your team has been very successful at merging there. I'd love to hear a little bit about that story of your acquisition of Diamond.
In any acquisition, one of the deciding factors of success has to be how quickly you can actually form a winning culture that actually takes the organization forward to realize the objectives of the acquisition in the first place. So if you can just put your mind back to traditional acquisitions where 2 organizations come together, they have their set ways, albeit very analog, so to speak, one paper form and one paper form there, and you're basically trying to work out how everything goes, and get into another form. Having a tool like ProcessMaker allowed us to build a unified service culture very, very rapidly, because it meant that we were able to take a baseline from one culture and it very openly challenged those baselines using, the colleagues from, the other bank, and take the best of both worlds. ProcessMaker made it reasonably easy for us to make the adaptations we needed to make. So if a flow can be enhanced, if some steps can be taken out, if it required further approvals or limits needed to be changed, ProcessMaker allowed us to do that in a very automated way, but also roll it out across all the branches in a very consistent manner as well. So effectively, it unified the culture of providing service consistently. So regardless of the branch of the bank you went to, if you were a customer, whether it was, say, the elsewhere Diamond Bank or an Access Bank, we were able to deliver a same look, same feel service, almost from the day, we went live with the acquisition. So a tool like this really, really can be a unifying force to drive consistent culture, consistent service, and drive that through efficiency as well.
Yeah, it's very interesting. A couple of things I guess that stuck out to me were that having documented processes from both organizations allowed you to take the best practices and compare notes and come up with maybe a third way, or pick one or the other. But ultimately, having them documented made it easier for your 2 organizations to make a decision on what path forward. Is that kind of a fair assessment?
That is spot on. That is spot on. Well put.
Yeah. And then on the flip side, delivering consistency, I think, was another key thing that I heard. So that no matter whether a customer went to a former Access branch or they went to a former Diamond branch, they got the same level of service, the same process, the same experience. And that really allowed you guys to achieve a successful merger. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you had told me previously you were able to do the integration within 4 months?
It's still what many analysts believe is probably one of the fastest integrations around, really. So we were able to take a bank. Access Bank had circa 12 million customers. Diamond came with another 12 million, and we were able to put the 2 together within 4 months. We're running on a single platform with about 35 million customers today. driving a significant part of that service or that service consistency through ProcessMaker automation as well. Yes.
That's pretty incredible story to get that kind of integration that quickly, and definitely kudos to your team there. So
thank you.
As we transition to kind of the final thought, I think this is something that's very appropriate and timely. There's so many things that have changed in the last couple months, and so many things I'm sure will change with COVID-19. And one of the things that certainly I know about Access Bank is you've been through economic challenges. This is nothing new to you as an organization. I know certainly, the 2016 oil crisis had a big impact as you have a large oil and gas exposure, but you were able to really press through that. I'd really love to hear kind of what your thoughts are and how you were able to achieve success through that crisis, and then what that means for the future.
For us, really, Access Bank has grown consistently and done consistently better on the back of every crisis. We don't see crises as an inhibitor. We just see it as a call to raise our game. And there's no better time than now to actually raise our game. We've been in this digitization journey. We saw it, and we started this journey well over 3 years ago. So when COVID came, to switch over and work from home for the bulk of our staff was almost automatic. We could approve memos, we could approve anything, on our phones, in a secure manner, by the way, as well. So that was automatic. There was no extra effort, to get there. What COVID has done is just, making us realize that the areas of our business that is not fully digitized now, have to be accelerated. But it goes beyond that. It's to offer the customer a really enduring customer experience in the digital world. So we're building new services around digital, which actually drive the customer away from the branch and also support our people not having to go into the office if they don't really need to. So for us, really, the opportunity to grow our business further, deepen our retail, use automation to serve more and scale up more, is actually a great one, which again, we're exploring as deeply as we can throughout the crisis.
Yeah, very interesting. And I know one of the things you and I spoke about the other day was related to that, where you spoke about the fourth technological wave. And I think one of the things that stuck out to me then, I'd love to have you let the audience kind of in on that as well, which is that the idea that globalization is not going to change with technology here into the future, and then in a COVID world, how that may look different. So, I'd love to just hear your thoughts about, as we move into the fourth technological wave and with globalization, what that means for your bank and what you're doing to seize the opportunity, but then also what would you recommend to others?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. There's so much talk about the fourth industrial revolution, over the past few years. But I think if there's one thing that is standing out in this revolution, it's that everybody is going digital around the world almost at the same time. If you look at previous revolutions, what tended to happen was that a part of the world would develop a technology that is leading, build it, use it, and then it's sent around the rest of the world. So resourcing was never an issue. You could basically buy or take resources from one part to drive it in another part. In this instance, the whole world is going digital at the same time. That means that to get the skills, everybody needs the skills in their country. So there's a fight for skill everywhere you go right now. And the only way I think companies can develop and be competitive and digitize the organizations very, very fast and sustain that digitization is to digitize the people inside the organization. as weird and as painful as that may be, that's actually paid off for us. I mean, you can see the example where, we chose against all odds, to develop a handful of people on writing and using ProcessMaker processes, some 2.5, 3 years ago. That's paying off for us now in terms of cost, in terms of agility. If we need to change something or build something, we can build it ourselves. So clearly, in the fourth technology wave, companies have to now invest more in their people, arm them with digital skills. And digital does not mean IT. Digital means the entire business as a word. Those who have the skills, we're best to automate a credit process than the credit people who are actually driving. We're best to sort out a settlement and reconciliations issue than picking a smart settlement and reconciliation person or people, and training them and arming them with the right digital skills to actually run their own processes as well. So I think that's going to be a distinctive factor for the winners. The people, how they train their people, the capabilities they put in their people, and of course, how they then pick the technologies that help them drive efficiency and provide a compelling service than their competitors can.
Yeah. Wow, that's as we transition here to questions and answers on the webinar, I think I want to synthesize some of the things that I heard you say really in your last point, which is technology is only part of the solution. The solution also has to be about enabling your staff. And I believe kind of what struck me most about that was it's not just about IT staff. In fact, if anything, I think with a low-code tool, your idea is that you're enabling the direct business line, the business experts who know their own business, and enabling them with the right tools to innovate because that's their world. And by digitizing your staff, you're actually going to get more leverage out of technology and innovate faster. Is that a fair kind of synthesis of everything that you shared?
That is spot on, Peter. The best and fastest and most sustainable way to innovate is to digitize your staff across the board, not just the technology people, but everybody in the business needs to be digitized.
Mm. That's such a powerful lesson, I think, for so many of the other banks out there that I've worked with. And so I'm very excited that you were able to share some of your thoughts with others. And I really look forward to seeing so many of your peers starting to think that way as well. So with no further ado, we will move into questions and answers now from the audience.
That's fantastic, Peter. Thank you very much indeed. And to Ade as well. Fascinating to hear about your experiences. And I'm glad that everything seems to be going so well with your project management plans there, really pushing forward. We're getting some great questions already coming through via the Q&A box. I would encourage you, if you haven't already done so, please do write your queries in that box now, and we'll be happy to take your questions over the next few minutes. If I might just kick off, Peter, we have got some great questions coming through, and I know that Ade was mentioning about lots of new initiatives that he has brought in of late, but what have been the biggest challenges faced by the bank's CXO team in getting convinced for automation and transformation to actually happen? I believe you have your colleague Ade with us as well, Festus. Peter, do you want to maybe introduce us to Festus, and perhaps that's something that you can discuss between you?
Great. Well, thank you, Georgina, and thanks everyone again. So, Festus has really been the crux of working with ProcessMaker. He's the head of the business unit for business process innovation there at Access Bank. So I thought it would be really beneficial for the audience to have a hands-on kind of experience of really anything from high level to deep dive. So Festus, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Peter, for inviting me.
Great. Well, so as we're looking at some of the questions that have come in, I guess one to start with here for everyone. Ade mentioned that, for example, the credit team can start doing their own, design of solutions because who better than the business side of the house to be able to know their business. Obviously, other teams within Access Bank as well. But I guess how have you and your team enabled the business units themselves to innovate and digitize?
Okay, thank you, Peter, one more time. What we did was there was a push for automation in the bank, and like Ade said, prior to the implementation of ProcessMaker, it was quite difficult getting your approvals moved from DEX to DEX. It takes days, weeks, and all that. And so there was already an hold within the organization for us to digitalize our processes, to automate our processes. And people were interested. And because when we started ProcessMaker, we got a team of some few development team members and some process owners. And they came together, and after a period of time, we got a local vendor, your partner, who worked with us for some period of time before we started moving on. And the interest is that you could see people were interested. They were ready to learn. They were ready to go beyond the ordinary. You see them working late in the night because they just want to do it themselves. And because of the knowledge they have, is their knowledge of work, their process area, they were able to, at the end of the day, they were able to at least document what they wanted and go ahead to prepare the prototype before the developers can come in and just help them to perfect whatever has been done. So that's how we were able to get them. There was a lot of interest, and people were ready to learn. They were ready to learn new things, new skills, all in a bid to get their processes automated.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Festus. I think there's a few key things that stuck out to me there. One is you said everyone was eager to learn, which is I think an interesting dynamic I want to discuss further. And then also that maybe they didn't build the solution, but they built at least the flow, and then it could be finished by a developer or someone more technical. But I guess, how does one get somebody excited and whatnot? I think, one of the things that I've experienced with other banks, and I don't know if this is part of what's happened there at Access Bank, but younger people want to have technology. They want to have that digital experience. Nobody wants to deal with the paperwork and the back and forth. And so when the business side of the house gets to see something that's innovative, I think it tends to get them really excited and passionate. But tell me a bit more about that. What do you think really has motivated your folks to go above and beyond to innovate?
Okay, because the bank has set as part of, apart from, there's what we call the basement initiative, whereby staff are heavily rewarded for implementing innovative solutions. And this was one major drive. In almost every staff in their KPI in the bank, there's a line there that states that you must have done certain level of automation. So that was a push for them because they know that they are impacting their career positively by being part of delivering automated processes for the institution.
Interesting. So even from the top executive management, there is a KPI for every employee to actually be innovators. That's got to drive such a culture of innovation. That's amazing. I don't know that I've ever talked to any other bank that's done that. What have you seen kind of culturally there? Has there been any pushback from staff and employees about kind of having a KPI tied to that?
Well, initially, but thank God for our management. Initially, people were reluctant, but when you saw that your KPI is being affected, you've done all the other part of your work, your core function, but because you were not able to implement innovative solution or be part of a team that delivered on that, you have to help yourself. If you want to remain an institution, the way to go is to see that how do I learn the skills, how do I support, how do I show interest, how do I support the entire delivery of transformation in terms of digitizing our processes. So that was a push. So people were interested, and at the end of the day, they got excited because beyond the fact that your KPI is affect your KPI, for some people that implemented very good solutions and the bank benefited majorly from it, they were heavily rewarded. They were rewarded with awards and some cash bonuses and all that.
Wow. That's really interesting. I think it's a different take on things that I guess I've never experienced, and I hope that all the other institutions, all the other banks on the line take note. That's a great strategy for sure. So looking at some of the other questions as they've been coming in, one of the questions, Festus, I guess you guys certainly implemented ProcessMaker on mobile, and it says, how do you leverage that the technology on mobile devices? Can you talk to us a bit about what that experience is like and how you leverage the mobile aspect of your processes?
Okay, thank you very much, Peter. The mobile is one of the major benefits we derived from the implementation of ProcessMaker. And let me just give you a short story. Prior to before 2017, 2018, when we implemented ProcessMaker, my group managing director then, he had a lot of approval he needs to sign off on paper, documents. So at times he has engagement abroad. You see him traveling with those memos because while on board, he needs to review those documents and sign off, then come back and deliver the document for it to be passed across the staff. But when we did this, and it saw that it was very easy with his iPad, with his phone, he could approve while even on board, provided there's internet access, while anywhere in the world he's able to process approval, make his comments and send, and people are getting notification immediately. That was a game changer because almost every management staff now started approving on mobile. So there's no excuse that, oh, I'm not in my office, I don't have the memo for me to approve. Wherever you are, people wake up 1 a.m. in the night, anytime, weekend, Saturday, Sunday, they're able to approve requests because they have access to it in their homes, and that makes life very easier for every one of us. And in fact, that was the major push. And mobile has been embraced, not just top management staff. Recently, the head of my HR said, look, to request via using the mobile. So all of these has contributed so much to adaptability of ProcessMaker within Access Bank. So there's a lot of adoption. People want it, and there's still more push. People are saying, I want my processes to be on ProcessMaker because of the ease of approval. Thank you.
Interesting. It's funny, a couple of things struck me there. So often when executives implement software, they're looking to have control or insight and accountability on their staff. But I think one of the things you just discussed was an ironic twist that I've never thought about. The mobile devices actually allow the staff to hold the management accountable because they can approve anywhere, anytime. So they can't pretend like they didn't see the memo or it didn't come to their inbox because it's there with them anywhere they go. That's kind of ironic. The second thing I think about mobile that that I'd love to talk more about. You said people can do it from anywhere in the world as long as they have internet. And obviously today that's a very appropriate comment, since who knows where people are. Maybe they're locked in their house today. Maybe they're, with COVID, everything has changed massively. So can you talk a bit about what your experience at Access has been like in the last, say, whatever, 3 or 4 months, but also what is that going to look like for the future, I guess?
Okay, like I said, recently I spoke with one of our general managers, and he said, Festus, life would have been miserable for me if not for the fact that we have ProcessMaker. He said, I process close to 100 to 200 transaction cases on ProcessMaker on a daily basis. He said, and I've not been to the office for the past 3 months.
Yeah. Well, that's great. That's really good insight. So I think we have time for probably 1 or 2 more questions, but I guess the one question, another question that came in is, what are some of the most significant processes you've automated? I guess maybe probably the person in the audience meant maybe by the impact on the bank. Was it a credit process, a deposit account? What kind of process, I guess, has stuck out in your mind, or the rest of the team that's been the most significant?
Okay, I think maybe I didn't hear you too clearly, Peter. Maybe what you're saying is the most important process, or one of the best set of processes we've implemented. I don't know if that's your question.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so yes, one of the most well, all processes are important, but if you talk about the processes, we've done approval workflow is top on the list. Approval workflow is a process for getting approval for your request from everyone. So that is a process being used by everybody, including the GMD, and everyone logs requests and needs management approval. So ProcessMaker is a default. Like at the point when we started driving the change, and we said that no, I'm not going to sign up paper approval. ProcessMaker is available for you. Go and do it. And today now, nobody thinks about, when you think about approval, you think about ProcessMaker. Beyond the approval workflow, we have a lot of our transactional processes on ProcessMaker. Our local fund transfer, our foreign fund transfer, our salary processing, all of these processes are on ProcessMaker. For example, the foreign fund transfer, ProcessMaker is integrated with Swift platform. So you're able to conveniently issue your request and it flows. That is integrated with a core banking application. Like I said, ProcessMaker in Access Bank is the most used application in Access Bank today, as of today. Thank you.
Yeah, and I know that just from our conversations, as well as the rest of ProcessMaker team, from our support team to our partners to our professional services, you and your team, Festus, deserve a lot of credit for the work you've done. It's just been incredible to watch the utilization. So thank you, obviously, for being such a great partner in this journey. And thank you, Ade, as well, for joining on this webinar. I believe we're right about at time. So Georgina, I'll with no further ado, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you very much. And our thanks as well to you, Peter, and also Festus and Ade for this presentation. It's been great to hear all your thoughts. Thanks to you, the audience, for listening in. Just to remind you that the webinar will be available on demand shortly. So if you'd like to have another listen, you're very welcome to do so. You can come back in via the same link. So we'll leave that with you. And our thanks once again to Peter, Festus and Ade, and to you all.